Everybody turn your microphones on. So Andy's not with us tonight. John is going to join us by phone. He's en route in the car and should be here in person within about 30 minutes. I'll take a motion first to allow John to participate remotely until he arrives.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so John will be remote initially. We'll move on, and as usual, we'll review and sign payroll and accounts payable for the period ending 8/31/24. We had payroll in the amount of $41,360.38. We had accounts payable in the amount of $78,035.36. We did have our periodic automatic payments to Swayze and the co-op. The Swayze payment is $255,000, and the co-op payment is $692,191. And I will pass this around. All set? All right, see you later, thanks. Next, I'll take a motion to review and approve the consent agenda.
Moved.
Paul, would you like to second the consent agenda?
I could find it.
It's right there.
Just give me a moment, sorry.
Yeah, sure, no problem. John, do you want to vote at all on the consent agenda or just abstain?
I'll abstain if that's all right.
Okay. We're just giving Paul a minute to look over the consent agenda. While he's doing that, I will just notify the public that what is in our consent agenda for this week are the public minutes from 8/20/24, the rec manifest, the treasurer's report, and building permits, so our standard consent agenda contents.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, and John's going to abstain, so we'll pass that. Next, at 6:03, we will open for public comment. Is there anyone who is interested in making any public comment tonight? Doug, come on up. Remember just to turn on the microphone. Yeah, you can go to that table, or either one's fine.
Good evening, everybody.
Hi. Remember to state your name
Yep.
and address.
Doug Finnan, Gove Road. And here for discussion, I'm not sure if I'm representing the planning board, our conservation committee, or just informing the select board. But anyway, we had a BudCom meeting over at the Highway Shed Department a couple of weeks ago. And the crew was there, and we were discussing the new truck, very nice truck, if you haven't seen it. But more importantly, it has a calibration system on it, which sort of piques my interest. There was some discussion in the past about Green Snow Pro Firefighters Seminar, which was brought up, I think, discussion through the planning board one time with Bruce Stevens. John mentioned it one time when we were doing the approval on the new development over 55 and the requirement for them to come in, anybody plowing and being certified for doing that. So the discussion came up. The guys over at the shed seemed to be receptive to it. After that, I contacted a couple of people. I spoke to Lee Cooper at UNH, and she informed me about the Green Snow Pro Firefighters Seminar. They review best practices, innovations, operations, equipment, anti-icing, de-icing operations, hands-on with equipment for calibration of new vehicles. Discussions of how salt works and how it doesn't work, the brine, pre-treated options. This is what she was giving me for a list. And pre-wet, which I'm not knowledgeable on any of these things at all. But she said there's much more. That was a quick overview that these instruction seminars review. There are 2 classes coming up that are local considered local, one in Stratham on October 9th, 2024 at 8 to 2:30, and one in Portsmouth for October 15th this year from 8 to 2:30. They provide coffee, donuts, and lunch. In the discussion on the Green Snow program, there's 3 levels of certification: master, individual, and subordinate. I do not know what these seminars provide. I don't know if it's just an overview of what you should be doing on our roadways or whatever. So I spoke to, and that was from Lee Cooper at UNH. I also spoke to Aubrey Volker, I believe I'm pronouncing her name correctly. She's out of Concord, and she gave the same information. She did give me a contact person, Marlene Enos out of UNH, for registration if we wanted to participate. The classes normally, if you were to do them individually, are anywhere from $200 to $250. A municipality can do them for $60 per person, which is not a bad investment for the town. My thought is that we've required River One to adopt these practices, number one. We also have a new plow truck, which has a calibration system that we should be familiar with, whether it be, the select board, planning board, conservation, at least the highway department. And not only that, I think we should set the example if we're making requirements on developments coming in and using this type of system. So I was wondering if the select board would consider sending the highway team, to the upcoming classes. They are not restricted to just the highway department. Select board members, planning board members, conservation members can all participate at $60. I don't know what our budgetary constraints are, but I don't think it's a bad idea. The more informed we are, the better we are doing on our roads. They also have additional courses for anybody who's going to the highway department to do plowing. They have this class. Again, I'm not knowledgeable on the whole thing. This was just an overview. A snow plowing 101 course. So anybody who's never really plowed for a town, they get introduced to this and they're able to do it in a safe sort of practice way, I guess. That's the only way I can explain it. And then I thought maybe either the select board might want to have a presentation done from the university as to one of the instructors, what these classes do involve, because there is an overview of best management practices at an extra cost of $450 a year for a whole department to be reviewed and updated. I don't know if we want to go that far or not. So I brought this up at the planning board meeting. The planning board members, Bruce Stevens in particular, is very conscious of it, especially over the bridges. He wants to do the best practice we can going over near the rivers. And the suggestion was made, maybe the conservation department pick up on this and get a seminar available. Who said, Doug said, right, that he'd probably reach out to the university? Doug Marino, he mentioned that he would reach out if the select board was at all interested. Time-wise, we're talking next month, so a decision would have to be made, or a recommendation, or just some sort of support one way or another. But I thought it was a good idea. I think Letty thought it was a good idea. She mentioned it while we were doing the review. And other than that, that's it.
Yeah, we had briefly talked about it at this board
A while ago.
1 or 2 meetings ago and kind of turfed it because we had a long agenda that night. But I think in general, the board was all in favor of seeing what's out there and what's available.
Yeah.
Maybe should we circle back? Next meeting, we have the election next week. Then we have a meeting the next week after that. Should we maybe circle back and have maybe like a list of interested folks from all the various committees who might want to go? And then we could approve that expense. I'm sure we could approve it either out of conservation, out of planning, out of
Right.
highway. I don't think the funds will be an issue if the board approves it. Would that make sense, do you think, Karen, to just give it, so that way 2 weeks if we have like a running list of people who might be interested in going to a workshop?
You can, I don't think it necessarily needs a board vote
Okay.
for the expenditure if it's $60 a class.
Yeah,
and that's well
it's not a lot of
within
money.
each department head's.
So we could
authority
even
to
just do it
spend.
offline if we get a group of interested folks who want to go, and then could circle back to it.
And if Doug Marino reaches out to Mrs. Enos, we can get more details.
Okay.
Wayne, the guys seem to be very interested. Yeah.
Okay.
Clearly, I want to recommend this, if we at least send us 3 guys,
Mhm.
we only have one truck that's set up for that, and it's pretty costly to take another truck and try to set that up. And if we get more new trucks coming in, then those, we can make sure that those trucks have those leads. We didn't even know it was in it.
Huh. Yeah. I definitely think we should send you folks, and then anybody from conservation, planning.
All 3 of us talked about it, that we would go for that just in case Jeff is gonna be the one driving it.
Yeah, but Wayne, I wasn't quite sure whether it was the donuts or the lunch. Really intrigued.
Either way. Thank you, Doug. Thank you for that work that you did. All right,
I would
Karen.
just add
Go
to
ahead, Paul.
the statute, which I've utilized and reviewed on the best management practices. There's a liability exclusion if you follow those best management practices and keep the documentation. I mean, I've only applied that in like my private, litigation to, vendors and owners of property that I represent privately, but I would anticipate and expect that it would also have some applicability to, municipal as well, to the extent anyone were to ever claim you did a negligent job and brought suit over it, it provides a liability exclusion if you follow the practices.
So once you set the, I know we had one of these things years ago, we moved there, all of us moved down there, but we didn't have our truck set up.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of towns that we got down there, and then we went through the class, but it was so expensive, nobody had the money to put those trucks in, to put the stuff in them. It takes a lot of stuff
Okay,
to set those trucks up.
cool.
I mean, we got, when we went there, we got, it was a good class,
Okay.
but now we got it here. And once, the other thing is good about that is when you set these trucks up, the amount of salt that you get, that's all you get on the road.
Right.
It out, so
Gotcha. Great.
And more importantly than the liability exclusion, there's a big environmental benefit to it.
Sure, sure. Any board members opposed to Karen just handling this offline and just sending as many people from town committees as would like to go?
No, I guess the only thing is that I'd say, and it sounds like, I just want to make sure that the highway guys go.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Doug. Anyone else interested in public comment? Okay, seeing none, we will end public comment at 6:15. We'll now move on to discussion action items. I think I might bump ARPA funds a little bit until John is here in person, which should be in the next 10-15 minutes. He's on the phone right now. And maybe move right to the next one, which is PD window project. Letty, I think you had that
is me.
put on there. Fill us in.
So I've been working a lot with various people on the municipal building project.
Yes.
And so as part of that, I toured kind of all of the areas and I talked to department heads. And in doing so, I discovered that one of the offices downstairs is on an exterior wall but doesn't have a window. It has 2 people working in it. And so I would like to put a window in that wall.
Just for obvious, like, sunlight exposure purposes. What about thinking about the fact that we may be going out of this building at some point?
I hope we are going out of this building at some point, but it's not happening very quickly.
Sure.
I think best case scenario would be out of here in 2 years. And I think it's just crazy that nobody before now has put a window in that room.
Is it something that you want to look to getting an estimate and bringing it to the board for formal discussion, or what?
I don't know. I guess the question was how does that typically happen if there's a project?
Well, this is the first I'm hearing about this project in particular, but usually Kip would be involved and he would
Okay.
price it out, and so I can ask him to start that.
Are the folks that work in that office expressing discontent with having no windows?
They're very polite people that work in that office that said that it was fine, but having a window would be nice.
Okay. So it might be worth at least
I-
looking into the feasibility and or cost.
I guess for what I would imagine just a couple $1,000s, it would greatly improve their quality.
Would it need to be bulletproof?
I think that's a safety question that we should,
We can talk about
Address
that in
offline.
non-public.
but there's actually 2 offices downstairs that don't have windows.
2 offices?
Well, the detective's office that is vacant is also, doesn't have a window.
But that's
in it.
on the inside of the building, right?
No, it's the next office over to the office that you're talking about. But I don't think there's anyone in there right now. Or
I
is
guess
it
I
not
didn't
the-
go in that office because there's
Because there's nobody in there.
nobody in. But then,
Maybe just start by talking to Kip and
yes,
seeing what the next steps would be.
sure.
When I saw windows on there, it kind of made me think of the rec windows. Do we have a time
Oh, yeah,
frame
good-
for that
good
coming
call on
before
that.
us at any point?
That should be coming soon. Kip was
Soon.
working on getting quotes, and
Okay.
I think he had one. I think he was working on making sure he had
Okay, so that's
at
pending.
least a second.
Okay, perfect. Just didn't want to lose track of that.
Mhm.
All right. Next, we have budget season expectations and timelines. And Lydia, I know you put this on, and since it's your first time on the board, it's probably a good time to review how we generally go about everything. So I don't know if you had particular questions or
I
suggestions.
did. I had asked a while ago, and I think I literally had on my notes ask this the first meeting in September.
There you go.
Just, I don't know, I think historically, the select board kind of gets each department budget kind of on a rolling basis, and it's not until the end of all of those that you see the total bottom line budget.
Correct. Yeah,
Yep.
that's correct, right?
I
Because we
would-
do them in chunks throughout the budget season.
I would like to request that we change that so that we at least get the number from every department by a certain time, so that we can, as we are going through those budgets, if there's a overall percentage increase that we want to try to stick to, we can know that we need to maybe look for a bunch of little places to make cuts as opposed to having to reopen a bunch of budgets at the end.
Sure, sure. And I think, Karen, we have historically reviewed them in a rolling fashion because there's too many to do in one night. But in general, they all are complete or mostly complete by an earlier date, isn't that right? So like, could we get a basic estimated total, even if we weren't going to discuss their budget for, several meetings? Is that something that our departments would be able to do, sort of?
Generally, the budget's submitted to me a week prior to their appointment with meeting the select board. So the bigger budgets, fire, library, those usually are coming in November and December. So I think we could meet this. I mean, if I set an email out saying, hey, these are expectations for COLA and for merit, this is what your appointment schedule will look like, start looking at budgets in October and give them a month to sort of start putting their budgets together. I think the big caveat to that is the board needs to also realize that that's going to be a really rough number. And from the number that you might see in October versus when they come in November or December might be different.
Why is it such a rough number?
Well,
Like,
that's
what
what I'm
change-
saying, is I'm not
what
sure
changes?
what might be changing in between, right? I'm not a department head, I can't speak for what they might be anticipating. I know health insurance, I won't be able to present that to you in October.
Well, sure, because
certain
that's
things.
a known, like, you get your GMRs after that.
I get that after, right? So
Right.
that's not something that can be, right? If there's staffing changes that are gonna happen between October and the end of the year, those are things that'll need to be fluid.
Sure.
So I think I think we could do as good an estimate as we can within the next 30 days, but I think the board needs to be open to, that can't be their only offering.
Sure.
Oh, yeah, no, I think it helps when you're looking at individual department budgets, if you know kind of what that total number is at the bottom.
I mean, they can give you some basic framework, but I think there should be some level of expectation that things are going to be
Sure.
fluid and changing.
I mean, yeah.
And I mean, major changes like, personnel, vehicles, things like that probably don't change in that period, but we can always anticipate that some things do.
I mean, if something comes up unexpectedly, it comes up
It comes up.
unexpectedly.
Right.
That's
No,
understandable.
I hear your point. Your point is it's easier to make line item suggestions on a budget when you understand what that impact is going to be on your total number at the end, which like we sort of do because we know compared to last year, et cetera, we know which budgets are bigger. Some of our budgets are like relatively level, so we know that has no impact. But I hear your point that it gives you just a little bit
I
more
think
clarity.
especially because we get the biggest budgets at the end,
Sure.
so we've already passed all, like,
Yeah, it's good to, get a ballpark of what they're anticipating.
Right.
And generally, when, usually we have that meeting where all the departments come and we have a department head meeting and they kind of give us a heads up, like, I think I'm going to be fairly level. I think I'm going to be up by about this much because I have to add this and this. So historically, and that meeting usually took place
It'll usually happen the third or fourth week in September. usually.
September. So that was always a ballpark, but I think what you're asking for is just like a little bit more specificity than the ballparks that we used to get, which I think is reasonable. I think we could try it out and see with that understanding that no budget is final until we vote and approve it. So, nothing is binding until there's actually a vote.
even then it's not.
Okay. And when will we get our COLA and inflationary advice from our financial company? That's usually September-ish.
Yep, so I can request that. Do you want to have that discussion before the department meeting, or do you want to have that the same evening?
Probably before, so we can give the departments a heads up on what we're expecting COLA to be, because that'll have budgetary impacts on everybody. If we can, I just don't remember. Isn't it like the three pines or what other name?
Yep, three bearings.
Three
will take care of
bearings.
that. So
Sensitive.
you're not meeting next week, is that right? Because of the election?
Well, we have to sign stuff.
We could have a short meeting if we needed to, if you thought that those numbers needed to be discussed that day, or
Or we can do COLA
the next meeting.
the third meeting, and then do the department meeting the fourth.
We could do that. Yeah, I just know they usually get it to us around September sometime, and they give us that report of what the inflationary predictions are and everything, which is luckily looking a lot.
I mean, if we have
better.
it for next meeting, we could at least look at it before if we have it for next week, we could look at it and think about it before we.
Yeah, you can put it in the mail for us if it's available at the election. Okay, so that would likely be, so we have the election on the 10th, so the 17th, we would try to have that discussion?
Yep.
Okay. Don't you think that would be good to do that before the
Yep, I think that makes
department
sense.
head meeting? Okay, perfect. Any other questions or suggestions, Letty, that you had about the budget season timelines?
I think that's it.
Okay, great. Next on the list is TH, I think that means town hall or town offices
It's me again.
hours.
It's me again. So I know that the planning office just hired a new admin,
Yes.
and that admin just sent out a very clear, like, these are the hours I will be working. And it sent me to the website, and I was looking at a lot of the hours that different departments work. And I think that it would be good to have definitive expectations about which days or times different offices are open.
Mhm.
And then in addition to that, I was wondering if it would make sense, given the way the building is currently set up, if we close town offices from 12:30 to 1 o'clock so that the employees can have lunch.
What do we do now in terms of people managing their lunch breaks?
We are open for lunch. We all generally sit together, and then when customers come in, we get up and sort of take turns and wait on the customers.
Does that work? Would folks prefer to do it differently? What's your sense of the?
I think it does work. I think it's, I mean, I haven't had any, we had a quick discussion about it today while we were at lunch, and I think the way that it's set up now, nobody's expressed an issue with continuing that way.
Do you see a major benefit? To me, it seems like there might actually be a benefit to not closing at lunch, because that's sometimes when people can come in on their lunch hour. I don't know if you feel strongly about it.
No, I've been here when people have come in the middle of people eating lunch, and it seemed disruptive to have to stop your meal because somebody needed something. But if it feels like not a problem, then that's fine for now.
Okay. I know one thing that that we probably should talk about is, I know with Tamara leaving and Jillian coming into that position, I believe now the town administrator office is now closed on Fridays.
Mhm.
Is that something that you two could potentially work out so that we don't have to close on Fridays?
Well, we did it that way because Jillian's working on, so when we were not meeting on Tuesday, she was staying until 7, so that the town clerk's office, that position was not in the building alone.
Oh, okay.
Now that we have the land use position filled, Mark's working Monday through Thursday for right now, and then once he's trained up and everything, then we'll transition that to a Tuesday through Friday. So then he'll be able to sort of cover our office hours on a Friday, so that he can still access property files and things of that nature.
Okay.
Kind of close that gap.
Is that what we used to do? Like, did we used to have somebody in that office, like Jillian, when you were in the planning office, were you sometimes covering across the hall?
Mhm.
Okay, so that's sort of the established pattern?
Mhm.
Okay, so that we would have, the town administrator's office would have access the 5 Monday through Friday?
Right, so
Okay.
people would have access to property files and building files
Okay.
consistently.
But there
whether
wouldn't be
depending
somebody
on
there who
different
could
staff.
answer questions about, like, in the town administrator's office.
Like which kind of questions? I mean,
I mean, I don't know what kind of questions you usually get.
the questions that today we got questions about maps and property files, septic plans. Those are all things that Mark would be
Okay,
able to
so that's something that
assist
you
with.
can, okay.
Okay, all right. So you don't think the fact that both of you are currently not in the building on Fridays, you don't feel that that's an issue from like a customer perspective, as long as there's somebody who can cover those needs?
I don't think that that's an issue. It hasn't been all summer.
Okay. Okay. If it becomes an issue or we get any feedback about that, would there be any possibility of you guys
we can
rejiggering your
shift.
schedules?
Yep.
Okay. All right, just want to make sure that we have coverage every day of the week.
And then the only other thing about that, since you're bringing up coverage every day of the week, I don't know. I know that the remote work policy was started during COVID.
Yes.
I am not sure that it's serving the community as well as it used to, because I think when people see that an office is open on a certain day, they expect people to be here.
Sure. I know Andy had brought that up a couple of months ago, that he potentially wanted to circle back to the remote. I think that would be actually a good discussion to have as we start budget discussions. So maybe we can put that on our agenda for that same 9/17 meeting, a reassessment
Yeah.
of remote work. Okay.
What would that have to do with budgets? Just out of
I
curiosity.
think it just kind of flows into
Okay.
like, as we're planning out for the next year.
Yeah.
It would.
Staffing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
kind of staffing coverage.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have a financial impact one way or the other. But we can put that on the list for 9/17. Anything else on that topic, Liddy?
Nope.
Okay. And next we have on here the cleared area at the rec for parking, which we've talked about a couple of times. And I actually saw that in the rec minutes, they started a conversation about that, but I think kind of decided that that was an ongoing discussion from at least how I read their minutes. So Letty, I didn't know if you wanted to weigh in on that. I think, did you put that on there?
Yeah, no, we had asked a couple, like, I guess it was probably a month ago at this point, about getting a quote to at least stump that area. Oh,
I can't hear Letty. I just want to make sure I hear her on this part.
Yes. Can you? Yeah.
I can talk louder. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Great. I had just said that about a month ago, after I went to that rec meeting, I had asked about what we could do to make that cleared land usable, while not doing work that would be undone later. And I think you maybe had suggested getting it stumped. And so I think we had talked about getting a quote for that. And I was just checking to see where we were.
So, yeah, Karen, I know we went, I didn't know this was going to be on the agenda until I saw it on there, but I didn't know if there was more to it. But did we, I know we talked about getting a quote last week. Karen, did we get one?
So Wayne was out there, a few weeks ago, and he did some basic cleanup, and cleaning up some of the land. So I talked to Kip about it. We have to get an excavator out there, and then we'll have to get some sort of equipment to dig up all of the stumps. He's thinking it'll be about $5,000 to do that project based off of what a rental would cost and the labor hours. So I don't have a firm quote for you to review, but those are the basic estimates based off of what we think the labor would entail.
And would we need,
Did that conversation happen in just the last couple of days?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, I know that there are companies out there that do it. Obviously, this would be less expensive if we rent equipment and did it ourselves, but it is just, on behalf of the rec commission, pretty high priority to try to figure out a way to get even temporary additional parking over there, just because the facilities are just used by so many, like literally thousands of people per weekend going into the sports season starting back up in the fall. So.
Well, and Andy and I talked about temporary parking today. So we had discussed, or we talked about potentially maybe staking out where the new facility would go and where we would anticipate additional parking to go with the new building, so that we could outline that and then create one of those lots as a temporary parking for like either a dirt parking lot or whatever, so that it wouldn't be work that is done and undone, but we would sort of stake out the building envelopes.
like, we would need to clear the stumps if there's gonna be parking there either way, kind of.
Right, and then we don't want to interfere with where a foundation might be poured, so then
Right.
we would line up the parking with those envelopes there.
Okay.
Would
My
this
sug-
impact the archery range or the current? My brain is
The gazebo area?
the gazebo area. Thank you. Yeah.
It shouldn't, but those are things, I mean, I'm not familiar enough with the plans and the setbacks, so that's something I'd want to walk over there with Kip and probably Mike from Weston and Sampson to outline those areas.
Okay. I guess again, on behalf of the rec commission, our request would just be to expedite that if at all possible.
Okay. So
Was
that'll
there
come-
not an easement concern, or are we talking about a different area from
I
with
think
the
we're
easement?
talking about a different area because the easement is over on the other side where the fields are.
We're talking about back behind the existing rec building,
Where
where we
there's-
cleared
where they
out some of
cleared
that
all
dead
those
stuff
trees.
that was in
Close
there,
to 125.
just for like temporary dirt parking overflow.
Right.
Okay, so you'll come back to the board when there's any more news about the potential of doing that? Okay. All right. John, anything else about that?
No, Paul. Did Paul just ask about the power line easement?
Yeah,
area?
he was just clarifying that that was a separate
Yeah.
issue.
Separate issue. I don't know if Becky Dunham is there. I'm almost there.
Yep,
But
she is.
Becky and I are gonna connect on a discussion. Becky, feel free to correct me if I misstate anything, but we're gonna connect on the possibility and what would need to be reviewed in order to make to consider parking over underneath that easement. But there is the black racer snake, which has a potential habitat and is a critically endangered species in that vicinity, and thus is a potential roadblock for this idea.
Okay. Thank you for that. Becky, did you want to say anything about that, or that sums it up pretty much?
Mid-May to the end of August, because that's where the nesting and the hatching of the young critters live.
Okay.
May to the end of August. Sounds like we're good then.
I don't know.
All right, so that may be a roadblock for us putting additional parking there. Okay, okay. All right, thank you. All right. John, do you want us to, you're almost here? Oh, he's walking in right now.
Document? Oh,
Yes. Sure. Oh, he just hung up, so he must really be here. Okay. Let's just give him a second. Why don't we just do, yeah, we can do the ARPA discussion first and then move on to your regular business. Hi, welcome.
Now we know if we're on.
Yes, we're on recording in progress. Now you know. I know. Well, you can turn sideways. All right, so we'll go back up to discussion action item A, which is ARPA funds. This is a continuation. This is, I think, our third meeting discussing this. And just to remind the public, we have approximately $140,000 or $141,000 of ARPA left. 10 of that we have previously pledged to Daphne's town clerk department to pay for a new voting machine, which we will likely acquire sometime in the next few months or so. And so that brings our total available ARPA down to around 131,000. We do have to obligate those funds by December 31st of this year and then spend them by 2026. And Karen did clarify that in order to obligate those funds, we have to have a specific project or estimate or bill to obligate those to, or we can obligate some of those funds to a budget line item in our budget. And so we had previously talked about multiple different projects that might qualify for those monies. The ones we've talked about previously was the PFAS-free fire gear for Chief Bird, which was around $48,000. The library additional costs for the amphitheater, which was around $10,000. The tennis/pickleball courts, which we'll talk about further because we have some new estimates, but that was in the realm of $80,000 to $100,000, with us potentially covering half of that with ARPA. There was a request from the Grange to put in septic and flush toilets, which was somewhere in the 35 plus range. Then there was the mold remediation downstairs, which was estimated in the $50,000 to $75,000 range to remediate a mold issue that we've had in the building. And then last was a highway for unanticipated costs on the rec road that had hit some ledge and had additional costs of about $12,000. So we had previously discussed that some of these things might be able to come out of other budget sources. And there had been a request for us to pull forward our current expenditures, which we all have in the back of our board packet tonight. And so I'll open it up to discussion after that summary.
How do you propose we go about making this decision? Are we gonna make votes on a group of three?
I think
one at a
it's kind
time?
of up to us. I think the vibe that I got from the board last time is that most of these projects had general consensus board support, but the question was how we pay for them.
Right.
So I think rather than like parsing out which ones we do, which ones we don't do, we all considered most of these to have at least some merit for importance for the town. So I think maybe, Letty, it might make sense, for example, there had been some thoughts that some of these we could probably more easily fit in our current budget, like the fire request,
Right.
the highway request. Maybe we should talk about those first, that we see alternate budgetary pathways for that might then lower the ask amount. I don't know how the board feels about that. It's up to us how to decide.
Yeah, I think I was just having a hard time wrapping my head around
Yeah.
how do we agree.
Yeah, I mean, I think I heard general unanimous consent that the fire gear makes sense. So if we are going as a select board to support about a $48,000 price tag for those PFAS-free gear, I think a question for tonight is, do we feel that there is room in the fire budget to use already appropriated tax funds for that? Or would we like to see that go more towards ARPA? And same thing for some of these other projects. Do we see an alternate funding pathway? And are some of these not really have a good alternate funding pathway and might be more appropriate for ARPA? That's kind of how I'm thinking about it. I don't know
think that makes
if
sense.
the other board members feel the same. Yeah, Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, at least these were all proposed as ARPA
Yep.
requests.
Yep.
That's how I'm considering it.
Sure.
I mean, I understand there might ultimately be other, pathways, but I have to consider them as they come
Yeah.
to me. And
We can also separate out the two things. So we can say, we pick this one for ARPA, and the others, we will have a separate discussion either today or another day about how we are going to fund those. However, whatever, I think we just need to let Karen know how we want to earmark this $131,000 so that, and we don't even have to decide definitively today. I think the thing that John and the rec board had requested is that if we are going to fund pickleball, if that's going to be the end result of the vote here, that one is the most time sensitive out of any of these. And so to wait till the end of December for that, I think the rec had requested we move sooner, either yay or nay on that project. I think some of these other projects we could even turf for discussion during budget season, whatever the board feels comfortable with. Karen, do you have any feedback on any of that? Okay. All right, so I don't know if anybody would like to open up the discussion. I will say that I think a few of these make the most sense. I'll just give sort of my 2 cents on it. I think the library, when you look at their budget, they're basically right on their expenses. So that is one that I think might make sense to use ARPA because we don't have really room in their budget. I know Karen has spoken a couple of times about the mold remediation, and we did have 3 board members who were vocally in support of that at our last meeting. And then we had previously discussed that the tennis pickleball courts might be a good option because otherwise that land will sit unused and that there's revenue generation potential there. So those are some of the ones I'd like us specifically to talk about tonight. I think all of us had thought that the highway rec road was probably pretty easily absorbable into a budget line. That was one of the smaller ticket items. So that one I'm a little bit less concerned about. So to me, I think it's the fire gear, the library, the tennis courts, the mold remediation, the highway, just deciding how this board wants to move forward tonight.
Can I just make
Please.
2 notes again? On the, I want to express my gratitude to Select Board Member Bedard for asking for additional quotes. We did get a different quote back for the fence that was reviewed with Kip that drops the total investment of the project, which was originally anticipated at $85,000, went up to $100,000 or north of $100,000, is now $82,000 for all in on that.
And we actually got 2 additional quotes, right, that we have here. One that was a little bit higher than the initial.
Yep, one that was
significantly lower.
closer to in line with the first
Yep.
quote, and then the second one, which was quite a bit less expensive, but also meets the specifications as requested by Andy and reviewed by Kip.
Yep.
So we're following that review. We're comfortable with it. And again, I want to point out that the rec being one of the lowest budget departments that serves like thousands and thousands of people on an annual basis, and we're not asking for $82,000. We're asking for half of that, and so I do think that that's I think that makes a statement in terms of this is something that we're that committed to trying to get underway because we have one of the smallest budgets at rec, and absorbing half of the expense and into our own budget. I think if the other departments were moving in that direction, then we would probably easily be able to do more of these projects.
Can you speak to, so this one estimate for the fence is significantly lower than the others, and they're giving us, it looks like a 6% discount, which is nice to see.
Municipality.
Did the rec department and Andy and or yourself feel that these were really equivalent products, equivalent jobs?
That's
Was
why
there some explanation for this.
That's why I really
price
harped on
variation?
I'm no fence
I'm not a fence expert, so I don't know.
In the least. So that's why I harped on the fact that we did review the specifications with Kip, who knows about this infinitely more than me or Andy does, and we had those conversations and asked those questions. He feels comfortable with this, and actually one of the comments that Kip made that I received third hand was that it was interesting that they, in this quote from Central Fence, actually provided more substantive detail in what they would be installing than some of the others that we received.
Okay. Okay, and just to clarify, so that new estimate is originally 31,650, but with the discount that they're going to give us was down to 29,751. So, and I think the original estimate for the courts was like 52.
52,150.
Right, yeah, that's what I have.
So, project all in 81,901. So call it 82. Half of that be $41,000.
Okay, so that's the updated request from Rec for 41,000 for pickleball. Thoughts or comments on that versus some of the other projects?
I mean, would it be appropriate to make a motion? that-
If someone is interested, that is absolutely an option.
I would make a motion for $41,000 to go to rec out of the ARPA funds.
Do we need a, Karen, do we need a parallel motion, or can we put it
For
in the same
impact?
motion to expend the other 41 out of the impact fees?
Either way, I need a separate motion, or I need a motion for the expenditure out of impact fees, so it can be included in one motion or separately.
I guess I will include it in that motion, because if
So
that
eight-
motion fails, then you don't need them.
82.
Yes,
So
I would
41
like
from
to, I
each.
would like to correct my motion to say I would like to spend $82,000 for the pickleball project, half to be funded out of ARPA and the other half to come from impact fees.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yep.
Okay, and I'm an aye, so that's a 3-1 pass. All right, I'm looking forward to seeing that happen. There's gonna be a lot of happy people. I know I was at the rec planning and there were a lot of
Can
folks
I ask a
there.
quick question? The voting machine, so I know that that was earmarked earlier in the ARPA process.
Mhm.
Do we also have to have like an invoice or something for that, or?
Yes.
Yes, by
And
December 31st.
Daphne knows that.
Okay, so we will that will definitely happen.
If we can make it happen, yes.
Yes, that's her anticipation that will
Okay.
happen. If not, we'll have to reallocate those funds to a different budget line
Okay.
item. All right, so out of the 131, we just pledged 41, leaving us 90,000 of ARPA left.
I would move that the PFAS be approved via ARPA for 48,000.
So if that was approved, that would bring us down to 42 left. Just thinking of the other things on here, Paul. What would if we approve that out of ARPA, what would your approach be to the mold remediation? Would you suggest that we pledge some of this money towards that, or that we continue to use capital reserve and then go to the voters to refund that? I'm just kind of thinking all the moving parts.
Well, there are a lot of moving parts, but I guess less moving parts now that we just.
We did
pledged,
one.
41.
Yep.
I mean, as you mentioned, there's a 10,000 for the library.
Yep.
So what did you say was left?
Well, there's the mold remediation,
Right.
the
now, what did you
library,
say was left after? the-
42, if we do about 48, that leaves us about 42. So this is all just, the mold project's happening no matter what, so it's just depending what bucket
Right.
of money we're paying it
Well-
out of, because we've already authorized it.
I guess I would suggest the 48 for PFAS.
Okay.
10,000 ultimately for the library.
Okay.
As you mentioned, and then it sounds like we're gonna have to use capital reserves for the remediation, so.
Is that a motion that you're making?
Well, I'm moving for the PFAS, at least at this point.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, is there a second for that?
I'll second that.
Okay, board discussion about that?
Yeah, I guess I would just, personally, I'm gonna vote no, because that budget has plenty of room in it to absorb that expense.
Okay,
So I
Okay.
did speak to Chief Bird today, and he said he does have some room in his budget that he could absorb some of those costs. So could I propose that you pay for half of the PFAS through the fire budget and half of it through ARPA? So you
I
would
love that
allocate,
idea.
so you allocate 24,000 towards that equipment that will get them all suited up. Then do the 10,605 for the library and then 50 for the mold. And then the rest of the mold
How much
project.
is mold is gonna be?
The mold, we still don't know. So the quotes I have right now are upwards, they're over the 50. We are just getting ready to do the remediation and the demo in the squad room. So once we open up that wall, we'll know how extensive the damage is, whether it extends to the evidence room and into the furnace room, or whether we can stop at the squad room. So until we get to that phase, which will occur in the next 2 weeks, Kip can't give me his worst case scenario budget, and I keep asking him every day.
Where will that get
So
absorbed out of?
so I'm asking for 50 out of ARPA and then the rest of it to come out of the capital reserve fund for building maintenance.
And depending how much we need to pull out of that capital reserve would then impact whether we need to put a warrant for that for
Correct.
next year, because we might or might not need to. Okay.
But then I think that gets everybody a little bit of
Certainly would be one option,
something.
right? Because then it would be 90
That gets you to
24
126, so just right there,
minus the 10. So there'd be like 55-ish for the mold project,
Yeah.
which may cover most of it, but there might be some additional. Okay.
Well-
Letty, your thoughts?
The amount of money in the fire department budget will more than cover it. And so I think it would be better to spend the money on, I'm not saying we shouldn't get them, to be clear. I think that given the amount of money they have, I would prefer, again, I would prefer to spend the money on something else.
Such as?
I don't know. You're asking me about this.
It's up to us. I mean, like we talked about before, these are not definitive discussions of whether these projects get funded at all. This
Well, and
is
that's-
just, are
that's
we
why-
using this pot of
That's
money?
why I wanted to be clear. I mean, I could make a motion saying that we should buy these with the budget.
Yep.
But, yep. And I don't know, I guess with, yeah.
And it's, the burden on the taxpayer here is really the same either way, because either if we pay for some of the fire gear out of ARPA or the mold out of ARPA, either way, it's coming out of the taxpayer. Some of that is coming out of the taxpayer funds. So it's really, it's a wash. It just depends what this board feels the most comfortable using ARPA funds for. Liz? We're not. It's on the list. I mentioned it when I listed the initial projects. So Paul had a motion out there to do the full funding.
Well,
John had seconded it.
I'm willing to accept a friendly amendment to
Okay.
reduce that, if that makes sense. And maybe you ought to educate me too, like Letty's talking about, some cushion and.
Yes, so
Kind
if
of
you
so.
look at your budget packet and you flip to the fire section, what you'll see is that at this time of year, we would generally expect to have about 33% of our budget left, and fire has 46% of their budget left, which is $465,000. I suspect the largest component of that is unfilled personnel.
We've been down a full-timer.
Yep, so we have a buffer. So what Letty is suggesting is you could, in her opinion, you could absorb that whole 48 into that, because if, let's say, they've got 14% of their budget over that they haven't spent, and their budget is right around $1 million, right? Times 1,007,289. There's about $141,000, which per their budget, they could have spent up to this point, which they have not spent. So they have a buffer, at least on paper, of at least $141,000 relative to this cost of $48,000 for the fire gear.
Was Chief Bird Karen asked whether that was fully absorbable or?
He said that he could absorb most of it, but he didn't give me a specific number as to.
It probably just
how
makes him
many that
nervous
means.
to say that because it's a non-budgeted item, I would imagine, right? He's trying to be careful and not go over his budget.
Right.
Right? That would be my guess.
I mean, I would accept the friendly amendment to bring it down from 48 to 20, and then maybe maybe we can consider other items like the library and the historical, so.
Okay. So I'm hearing an
Or can I
amendment.
amend myself?
You can amend yourself. Sure.
Okay.
Why not? Do you want to do half, which would be 24,000, or what would you feel comfortable with doing as an amendment?
I mean, 24, anywhere between 20 and 24, whatever
Okay.
the consensus is.
Okay. Okay. If we did 20, there would be 70 left. So even if you did the library, you'd have a 60 left between the highway, the molds, the Grange, those projects.
But you said the highway was.
It's on the
vulnerable.
list, but it's one that I think is a small, relatively small dollar value. That same thing, if you look at highway, they have a pretty good buffer to absorb that $12,000. I think we all kind of agreed that that was probably the lowest priority for us.
Well,
Okay.
I mean, so perhaps with those numbers, maybe 20
20?
makes sense. I mean, I wish the chief was here, but you had the, sounds like the conversation, Karen, with the
Mhm.
chief. Would he, you think, be okay with 20? He preferred 24.
I think half is fair, but
Okay.
So just to be clear, this is our budget and our money as the select board.
I know, but I.
Yeah,
can
we
take-
want the chief to feel comfortable,
Well,
but
I want
he's,
recommendations.
he
I think
also,
he just wants
yeah.
the suits.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
correct.
As do we.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly. Okay, Paul, so I'm gonna nail you down. What's your
24.
amended? 24.
Yeah.
Okay. 24 for fire. So John, would you like to resecond that amended budget? Other further discussion? Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the table for 24 of ARPA to go towards the PFAS-free fire gear, with the remainder coming out of their budget. All in favor?
Aye.
Nay.
All opposed? Letty? And I'm an aye, so that will pass 3-1. And we'll do 24 for that. All right, so now we have 66 left. I think I was hearing some general consensus that the library, the 10,400. I don't know if anybody wants to make that motion or have further discussion about that.
Does it have to be that amount specifically, or could it just be whatever amount they need to have their budget stay positive?
I think we need it at least to be a documented amount, right? So probably what would be best, because they're pretty good about staying on budget. They're like right on
Jan-
budget.
Janice asked for 10,605.72.
10,605. I think that's probably the cleaner way, because we have an actual, I think, bill that for that amount, Karen, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
10,605. Further discussion or anyone interested in moving that forward?
Moved.
So we have a motion on the table for the 10,605 for the library amphitheater. Any second for that?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion about that? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, no opposed, and I'm an aye, so that's a pass. So 10-6. So 90 minus 24 minus,
You have 55.
55.
38 left.
so we can now decide what portion of that we want to do towards mold remediation versus the Grange project versus highway, as we discussed. That was our lower priority request on there for discussion about those.
Why don't we wait and see on this mold thing? Like,
We can do that.
mold is urgent priority and
We already have
an
funding
an
identified.
unknown.
Yep.
At this,
What kind of time frame do you think will have a better dollar value for that?
I think it will probably be at least 2 weeks before I'll have.
Oh, so that's
a more
fine, so it's
solid
not,
number.
okay. Would you be comfortable that we pledge the time-sensitive pickleball? We'll let the chief know about fire, we'll let the library know, and those will be cleaned up, and then we'll leave this 55 and wait on that mold remediation project. Okay. And then in terms of the Grange, I know there had been some board support for that idea because that is a town-owned building that does not have flush toilets. I don't know, I don't see anybody from the Historical Society here, but I think, just one thing, one thought I had about that is, I know that in the library, there was really like a robust community fundraising. I don't know if that's ever been discussed at the Historical Society in terms of a matching or a fundraising or some sort of campaign, because obviously this community has been very generous historically about projects like that. And I guess I would wonder if the Historical Society might consider that. So maybe I'll shoot them an email just to ask them if that's come up at their meetings.
Could we do that?
Sure, why not?
Like, could we say, like, whatever you can raise from whenever to whenever, we'll match it?
I mean, I think we could just have those discussions. But like the library, the Friends raised the money and then transferred it to us. So I think it would be the same process at the Historical Society, right? Because technically the libraries, it's exactly the same as the library. Yeah, we were lucky enough in both cases to have a nonprofit entity that could do the fundraising. So I think it's actually a parallel event. I don't know if that's been discussed at the Historical Society, but I think all of us are generally in favor of the idea that town buildings should have flush toilets. Like that's kind of, that's not a super controversial idea, but I just wonder if we might either go to the public for that, or whether if we don't end up funding this out of ARPA, this could also come forward as a warrant article. There's always a lot of different pathways that can happen for projects that don't get pulled out of ARPA. John, did you want to say something?
I guess, no, I want to say two things, but
Okay.
on that, you know, the idea that spending that kind of money on something that gets maybe 300 people to
Yep.
visit a year per, what we heard last week or 2 weeks ago, I don't remember if it was last week or 2 weeks ago, but that's concerning to me from a fiscal responsibility
Sure.
standpoint. Second thing that I wanted to talk about, and I don't know if this is possible, but given the urgency of the mold situation, is there any possibility that we could, at the very least, get something going within the next 2 weeks on the remediation aspect of?
We've been working on the mold for over a month
It's
already.
going on.
What about the costs part of it? Who's incurring the costs and how is that being?
It doesn't matter because it's all on paper.
We had already decided to use it out of the capital reserve building.
So when we've been paying the bills, we've been paying it out of a due from liability account. There was a few in this week's AP, like the electrical costs, some of the wiring to run and set up the new squad room in the training room.
Okay.
So the workstations and the workflow has all been moved. Now we have to start the demo and then seal off the back part of the building so that we can start.
Roughly how much
Have we spent so far?
And simultaneously, is that included in this 50 that we're talking about?
It all has been included, yes.
Okay.
So I've been keeping a tab on all of the wiring and all of that. I think it was probably about 15-ish to get that room set up and moved.
Okay.
And then
I
now
thought we had given you like authority.
We did. I don't know if
You
you were
didn't.
here that meeting.
We
that
gave
we
her
did.
a
No,
Freedom
now that
fix
we're
it,
talking
yeah.
about it, I remember
We
it. And
said,
yeah.
for now, let's pay for it out of like, TBD, but we're either going to go
But, like,
capital
get it done,
reserves.
yeah.
Yeah, because it has to happen, or we're going to do ARPA or some combination of.
Or there's room in the budget.
Or there's room in the budget, right? That's always the third option.
Right.
Yeah. Because you also can just put this 55K right back into any line item in our budget, as is allowed by the ARPA guidelines.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for your feedback and comments on that. And we will hold that 55K for now until we get a better sense of the mold project.
Ooh, can I just really quickly, sorry, I just
Sure.
because you were saying about how only 300 people come.
Well, those aren't my
Hold on,
numbers.
I know.
That was from last
I
meeting.
heard your words.
Okay.
My immediate thought was like, well, what does that mean? And so I know that they're open one Saturday a month, and like they open over the summer, I think. So 300 people over 10 days is actually kind of impressive.
Okay.
Sure. I mean, yeah,
It's not like
it's a valid request.
half
I
of
mean,
one person.
asking for a toilet is a valid request.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, to John's point, that, I think there's difference in terms of the impact, which is why honestly, this might be one that would be good to be a warrant article. Because if the people in town feel really strongly that that's how they want their tax dollars used, that's really instructive to the select board in terms of the desires of the public.
Right.
So
Yeah.
there are other ways to get this funded.
So I guess the perspective that I was looking at it was we literally have thousands of people at the rec campus every weekend,
Got your pickleball court.
but we also don't have a bathroom. And,
True.
It's just,
True.
I'm just.
Are
out-
you asking for a bathroom?
Not yet.
Not
I will
yet.
be, but
Okay,
I
well,
will be.
when you're asking for a
That's
bathroom, let's talk.
Everyone needs bathrooms. I think we're in agreement. All right, that closes out our discussion action items. We'll now turn to regular business, and we'll start as usual with Karen.
I have appointment slips for Al Belanger and Caleb Labby for alternate cemetery trustees, which was voted on last week, so that's just a signature. I have a contract from Health Trust. They are updating their Medicaid Advantage and drug plan package, and they've created a plan that is in-house, which is comparable coverage, same billing. It just reduces the costs, the premium for the retiree. So this requires 2 signatures in order to move forward
So-
with that plan for the 25 year.
So just tell us a little bit more about what this changes from now.
This is only bringing the coverage in-house to Health Trust instead of going outside, and this is only impacting retirees. This is not impacting
Okay.
any employees
Oh, okay.
or any active employees.
Just a different way to give the same services to that group of people.
Correct, and to reduce the premiums on their
So this
their
would be a,
out-of-pocket expenses.
would this be a cost savings to the retirees, the town, or both?
This is a cost savings to the retirees because this is fully funded by the retirees. So this
Gotcha.
is not an output of the town at all.
Gotcha.
It's just authorization for them to move forward with that billing option for them.
Gotcha. Thank you for explaining that. I will take a motion to sign this health trust plan package.
Moved.
Is there a second? Okay, all in favor?
All right.
And I'm an aye, so we'll sign here. Do you just need me to sign this,
I
it looks
do,
like?
yes. Just 2 signature places.
Okay,
I have a notice of intent to cut for a parcel on South Road. This coincides with the land use change tax bills that the board signed last week. So it's map 223 lot 48.
is this one that has been approved before? Or is it a new?
not. It's a new
It's a new
intent.
cut.
Where is it? What address?
I believe it's one of the
South
HEP
of
properties
South
over on
Road.
South Road.
Map 223, lot 48,
think it's-
South Road, Access Road, 4 acres. 3 acres will be cut.
It's 284 South Road.
And there's no concerns about this from the town's perspective?
Nope. Correct.
I'll take a motion to sign the intent to cut. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, and it looks like all of us sign here.
I have a pre-disaster mitigation signature that is needing to be signed. This is just changing, so this is a FEMA grant that the town was already awarded, and the signature is just authorizing the completion date to change from April 1, 23 to October 1, 24.
Is
And this
this the
requires-
road washout that
That is,
FEMA
yes.
was gonna cover for us? So it's just a date change?
Yep.
More than anything? I'll take a motion to sign the pre-disaster mitigation program for FEMA.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm an aye, and it looks like
All of them.
maybe 4 of us have to sign this.
Luckily, there are 4 of us.
And just a quick update, our contract with Waste Management for our disposal expires in June of '25. The district is looking at a new contract extension with Waste Management for 5 years with the potential for a 5-year extension at that point, so extending the contract to 2035. They said the cost to go out to bid is about $30,000, and they don't anticipate that being prudent to the town at this point, given what the market values are. So that's what they're proposing at this point. A few weeks ago in your mail, you saw a proposal for the town of Epping, which is potentially opening a landfill. They have, which So that's anticipated to be open in 2026. They do have a current contract with Waste Management, which goes for 8 more years. So even if that station is to open, it's not going to be usable or an option for us for at least that 8 years.
I'm sorry, who is recommending this?
The Southeast Regional Refuse Disposal District. So we're a member of the district with 5 other towns. And so Bob, they went to a meeting last week, and this was the notes from Bob.
So what they're asking for us to approve is what at this point?
I'm just giving you an update. They're still
It's just a
working on
heads up.
finalizing the contract, but that's where they're leaning, is to not go out to bid and to just offer an extension.
And would that change our contracted rates with them, or they would propose those to us for the 5 years?
It is looking like it will have a 4.5% escalator every year.
So we'll just wait for that contract to come
Yes.
before us?
Yep.
Okay. Anything else?
Are there alternatives?
Not that would be cost effective.
Okay.
If the Epping landfill were to open, that could considerably reduce the town's costs, right? Because your transport costs from us to that facility, as opposed to hauling all the way up to Rochester and back 2-3 times a week, would be significant.
But it would take some time
But
for us to
that's
take advantage from that.
Not an
Would-
option in the very near future.
by the
Or that would
time-
be impactful.
By the
for
time our
this
contract
extension.
expires, that
Right.
won't be an option on the table.
Right.
Okay, gotcha.
Or even by the end of this 5-year extension.
Okay.
even.
Anything else you had for us?
Nope.
Okay. We will do committee updates and any board business, and we'll start with John.
No, not particularly.
No.
No.
There's a lot of discussion at the rec. There's a lot of discussion around field maintenance and making sure that we take care of our fields, because we've lost a significant amount of revenue over the last 12 months as a result of kind of flooding, particularly on the lower fields. So we have a drainage project and we have a irrigation project that are on the table and ready to be pushed forward. I half expected to be bringing those to you tonight, but we're not yet. Do you have?
One thing Andy and I talked about was potentially opening a capital reserve fund and then funding it and using those funds for outdoor maintenance of the fields.
For next year?
The rec doesn't have a fund,
They
right?
don't have a fund for that purpose.
Well,
And if you had rental revenue from field rentals, you could deposit those funds into that.
I'm anticipating, based on the discussions we had at the last rec commission meeting, I'm anticipating using remaining impact fees for the field maintenance, as specifically because, again, it's revenue generating activity. So in order to get the leagues, whether it's lacrosse or soccer or baseball, to play here, they have to have usable fields, particularly during the season. So Exeter Soccer couldn't play here for a couple of months at the beginning of this season. So that was one of the reasons why this seemed as though it was relatively urgent.
You just have to make sure it's an upgrade and not just regular routine maintenance.
Irrigation and drainage. So
I think they're talking
it-
about new
it would,
installs.
it would
right?
definitely be upgrade to current facilities. So
And right now, when the rec has those rental fees and those fees, those just go into their revolving fund?
Yes.
Yes, so it would just be the potential to move those into a capital reserve fund instead.
Potentially, yeah.
Okay, that's something the rec could think
I
of.
mean,
as an
and
option
that,
for the
yeah,
future.
well, that's the idea, right? Where
Yeah.
we can get to be completely self-sustaining. So that's the objective. And then we also discussed the community center and the support for the design of a community center, and getting something on paper so that we can have discussions both here and with the public about what that would look like, particularly in conjunction with a potential town hall project and the cost savings that would be reflected in doing both in parallel.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay, Paul?
I mean, conservation meets next week, so
Okay.
I'll report back after.
Okay. Letty?
I don't think, hold on, I just have to see if have we met since? Yeah, we haven't, the planning board hasn't met since we met last time. Communications, a couple of us came in over the weekend and added this new sign so that there's no confusion
Yes,
about
that's
whether or
great.
not we're recording.
I love it.
There were questions again about network speed. I know that you had said that you were gonna reach out to somebody.
I reached out to Block 5 last week. I got an updated quote and a contract, but it is 12 pages long and I haven't had a chance to read it yet.
Okay. And then, actually, speaking of Block 5, before we go into budget season, could they do like an audit of stuff that we might need technology-wise before we do budgets? Or what typically happens there?
They do that every year and then they'll do, and periodically they'll send me like a list of domains and computers that are inactive to make sure that they're not managing anything unnecessarily.
Can we get a PDF copy of the audit report that's in here
Yes.
and the letter?
Yes.
Okay. And we had touched on this earlier, but I'm gonna just reiterate that currently there's not a great system for making sure that meetings are streamed. So sometimes
That the videos are linked to the website, right?
no.
Oh, even that they're
Somebody
recorded.
has to start that.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And so I don't know if that is I don't know where that directive comes from or who we tell it to or how that works.
I think as we discussed, now that we have fully populated all committees, to have that 1 or 2 training sessions and to make it very clear that it is the requirement of the board that all meetings be live streamed and that someone in that room needs to know how to do that.
Okay.
Whether it is the select board member, as you suggested.
Again,
whether it's the chair.
My 8-year-old was able to
cetera.
do it without any coaching.
I've learned
by
how to
just
do it.
reading
If I
the
can do
screen.
it,
So
anybody can do
it's-
it.
The instructions are there.
Yep, so I think we just need to be very explicit, and I think we were, as we got all those committees populated, that part of the expectation was to make sure that people were using the new website to its fullest potential.
Yes.
Great.
And I think that's it.
Okay. In terms of budget committee, we do have a regular meeting on Monday, September 16th. We then, the following week on the 23rd, will have a site walk at the library. That's our last official site walk, although Karen, I know that Jack had talked about maybe doing a little kind of town offices site walk after the 16th. Was that confirmed that we're gonna do that? Okay, okay. So we may do sort of a little quick site walk up here after our meeting on the 16th. So those are our upcoming.
What time is your meeting on the 16th?
6 o'clock. Let me just look at this. Yes. Both of them are 6 o'clock. Monday, September 16th, 6 o'clock here. Site walk, September 23rd, 6 o'clock at the library. And with a potential sort of mini site walk up here directly after that 6 p.m. meeting on September 16th. Are you putting those on the website for us?
No, there's already another meeting that night. So I wanted to make sure that
Which night?
the 16th.
Here?
Yes,
It's
it's the
the Q&A.
municipal building Q&A session. The chief has been doing those once a month.
Oh,
just to make
yeah, so
sure
that
the
conflicts?
public- I mean, conflicts is a strong term.
Yeah, maybe that can move down the hall.
Definitely.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, great. Thank you for checking that. Other updates I had this last Thursday, we did the ballot testing for the primaries, and it went great. And thank you to Betsy, who was here, who helped. Betsy and I fed lots and lots and lots of test ballots through the machine to help out Daphne. It was a really illustrative test because when we ran through our first set of 400 ballots and then compared them to the hand count, they didn't match. And we very quickly determined that the humans had made an error and the machine was correct. And so then when we ran through another 400 ballots, it matched exactly the first time. So our machine is still working good. We know we're going to get a new, better one soon, but just to confirm to the public that it was an excellent test and everything worked as expected. And we are looking forward to the election next week. I once again want to thank the Swayze School Board, which is allowing us to have the election there. That had taken some time and effort to get that to go through. And then one thing I briefly spoke to Daphne about that I wanted to bring up is there had been a series of election trainings that Daphne had sent us emails about, and I actually went to the one that was in Manchester. And some of it was stuff that didn't apply a lot to Brentwood about affidavit ballots and things that are rarely an issue in Brentwood. But there was a lot of good advice about electioneering and about how to run your elections. and there was a real focus on parking. And I do know that we have had some issues with parking, even at Swayze, where there's a decent amount of parking. The primary, we can anticipate a relatively big turnout, and then in November, an even bigger turnout. So I did discuss with Daphne whether this board might want to make an official request that election workers, electioneering people do not park at Swayze and maybe park here, or park at the fire station, or park at the rec and have some sort of like carpools.
Could they park at the
or
back of
something.
Swayze?
Yes, I think that would be preferential, but even that, we might get a little tight with parking. I mean, we could try that for the primary and see
I
how it
don't
went.
remember.
I just wanted to
in
bring it
past, it-
up because
yeah,
I think
that.
it has been an issue in the past about parking. They said that in some towns, the select board actually passes a temporary ordinance that limits parking at the polls for like 45 minutes or an hour, and that you can be ticketed if you are there longer. I don't think we necessarily want to go that far, but that some bigger, like, city precincts have done that. So I just wanted to bring it to the board. Do we want to make any sort of official request to our ballot clerks? I think Daphne is exempt from this, obviously, because her car has all of the stuff in it. PD will be there, so there are definitely some cars that will be parked right near the front door. But in terms of if you count all of our ballot clerks, all the candidates who might be electioneering out front, that ends up being like about 30-ish cars. And that basically fills up a pretty good percentage of the parking lot. So I don't know if we wanted to suggest and or mandate that people park at another town location and carpool. I just wanted to throw it out there to try to make the
Does
election
the
go
back?
smoothly. We could do a time limit, yeah.
And I think that might,
You're too far away from the microphone, so
I,
there's no turning it on.
it also was off.
Yeah,
so
Just saying.
But.
I think the time limit would work great for people coming to vote, but like if someone is a candidate who wants to stand out front for 6 hours, then it's sort of the same thing,
Well,
saying there's a time
that's-
limit or that you have to carpool.
Being a candidate, that's kind of limiting. I think that it would be a relatively easy lift to
To say you have to
Get
get
a
dropped
drop,
off. or-
get a ride.
But can we say that? Like, can we limit somebody who's a
Apparently we
candidate?
can make
You
town
can
ordinance.
pass a temporary town parking ordinance, yes, according to
And
the
not-
Secretary of State's
But then it
office.
would also apply to like you pointed out, people that are working the polls and stuff.
I think
guess-
we can specify who it applies to. I mean, I think we could obviously exempt, Daphne and PD and people that have to have their vehicles.
So I guess my question
Right
would
there.
be, did the back parking lot ever fill up in past
I
elections?
don't, I think, to your point, I think a lot of election workers parked in the main parking lot last time, and that was not good. And when we had that giant snowstorm, I know I was parked over there, and I was like, oh, I should have parked in the back. I've parked in the back since then, so we could even, if we want to just say that, everybody has to park in the back and see how it goes.
I think seeing how that would go specifically for this election will be instructive for the election in November, where
Sure.
we are probably gonna have a much larger turnout.
Yeah, I would anticipate we would.
That would be my,
Maybe we can just make a request as
Yeah.
opposed to a mandate.
Yeah, I think it's reasonable to get, if you can get dropped off, or like if you're a poll worker, if you can get a ride or carpool or park at one of the other town locations, or even if it's a nice day, just walk from here, would make some sense. Okay, so maybe just kind of keep it loose now, make a request, and then I can ask Daphne to send that request out to all of our registered election inspectors, and we'll see how it goes. Okay. Okay. She also had mentioned that it might be beneficial for us to clearly delineate some handicapped parking places right in the front, which I don't think we've officially done in the past. We've probably unofficially done, or because you can also do curbside.
it was just the Wild
voting.
West
Could
last year.
absolutely.
I could
So
tell you, I
if
stood there
there's-
for a long time. And it was
So
the
if
Wild
maybe we could
West.
talk to Highway, if there's some, I don't know if we have handicap signs around that we could locate there. Maybe if we could put a few handicap spots that are specifically obvious right in front for people
I
that
think we
need to
should
do
just
that.
say all of any parking spots in that front of the building.
the front
are
loop.
Handicap only.
Sure, I think that makes
'cause
sense.
I-
Oh, perfect. Awesome. Perfect. Good. We're just trying to plan ahead so everything goes smoothly. Luckily, we shouldn't have snow or weather or anything for,
For
in September. I'm not saying November, but September we shouldn't. Okay, so thank you. And depending how that goes, maybe we'll rediscuss that before the presidential primary.
Just jinx
Okay.
us.
I did not jinx us. It's September. Come on, guys. I'll take responsibility if it snows on
It's New
September 10th.
England.
I'll take it. I own it. I think
General election. in
Huh?
November. General election.
general election, we could have snow. Who knows? I think that was all that I had. Anybody else have any board business before we go into non-public? Nope, anything else from you? Okay, we are going to go into non-public for personnel, legal, and security. I'll take a motion for that.
So moved.
Is there a second? And we have to take a roll call vote for that. John? Paul? Letty?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. So we will go into non-public at 7:25.
Paul, did you make the motion? You made the motion.
He seconded it. I will. It came on perfectly, so I'm assuming it's gonna go up.
People have been very confused
Yep, perfect.
Have a good night.
And it also says not to. It's not flashing.